couple days ago, I decided to glance at the EFT Reddit, and I was scrolling through all the people complaining, and then I found something that I actually thought was worth reading. This absolute lad, Pixeled1, made an in-depth dive into the recoil mechanics of Escape from Tarkov, and I was like, I can get down with this. I shot him a message, asked him if I could make a video about it, and he gave me the all clear, which is fucking sweet of him. So go give this boy some karma. I'll leave a link to the Reddit post down below. So we're gonna go over a couple of his points, and we're gonna take an in-depth dive into the recoil mechanics of Escape from Tarkov. In most shooter games, the firing accuracy is based on two mechanics usually, bloom and cursor displacement. Bloom is that little invisible circle that widens the more you fire, causing your rounds fired in succession to differ from your point of aim or like the middle of your sight. Some games have different bloom, varying from gun to gun, from game to game, you know. It's also that thing that makes you say, I was aiming right at him, but I wasn't hitting him. On the other hand, cursor displacement is the game moving the player's mouse position as it tries to represent recoil. This is what makes your gun fly up, left, right, and down when you shoot it. Combined, these mechanics make up a good chunk of how FPS games handle recoil, moving the cursor from its original position, and the intended point of impact is blooming with the cursor as it's tracked while being displaced. Pixeled1 now comes up with something I hadn't thought of before, and that's what if the cursor is used as the point of aim and allows the weapon to act independently of it. Then he gives us an example. In real life, if I draw down on a target with my pistol, every time I break a shot, I'm trying to hit the same area. In game terms, let's say I have not intentionally moved my cursor position, but due to a multitude of factors we'll simply refer to as recoil, whether I am not able to accurately place those rounds on target is a different matter. Generally, the faster I shoot, the closer I start to approach the boundary of my capabilities. Shoot too quickly, and the gun will simply start to get ahead of me. As I get better at shooting, this threshold can be pushed further and further, allowing me to regain control at various rates of fire. He also touches on that during rapid fire, he doesn't find that his focus and attention fly upward into the sky. The firearm is what's moving, not his focus or intent. In a similar way, Escape from Tarkov seems to interpret the user's cursor position to represent where the user wants to aim, not necessarily where the muzzle is pointing. Just like in real life, your PMC is always trying to hit a certain target, shown by your PMC attempting to compensate for the recoil to bring the gun back down towards the original point of aim. Basically, the weapon takes on a life of its own, kind of independent from the user's direct control. Escape from Tarkov uses a third recoil mechanic, which Pixel called weapon aim point. Altogether, this is what the graph looks like now. The user's cursor position remains stable, no displacement, while the bloom increases. The weapon aim point climbs and then sinks back down towards the original position of aim. He compares it to a whale's blowhole. The water shoots up, spreads out, then falls back down. Pixel refers to this mechanic as brilliant, much more nuanced and accurate, realistic way to represent an automatic weapon. This mechanic leaves developers with much wider range of ways to represent how different weapons feel, and also the different levels of skill in managing recoil. A common complaint, as he puts it, and a gripe I've had with EFT for a little bit, is that semi-auto fire is discouraged. Semi-auto follows the same pattern as full auto fire. Now, I've only been to a gun range once, and I spent like $300 on renting different guns and ammo. I've never fired a gun in full auto, but I can't imagine it's easier than semi. I left my target at my friend's house a couple months ago, and I never found it. So I can't show you how I was shooting, but let's just say that you might want me on your zombie apocalypse survival squad. I never found myself having to re-aim at the target. After the shot, my aim seemed to naturally come back to the target quickly, and I was able to keep a pretty nice group. Pixel's possible solution to making semi-auto more viable would be to make the weapon respond more or less consistently to the rate of fire instead of the fire mode. Common sense says that firing 2 shots a second or at 120 RPM should handle better than firing at 15 a second or 900 RPM. The patch notes for 11.7 say that they plan on increasing recoil 30% for all guns. While I was making this video, Pestilly took a couple AKs into an offline raid with a 30% difference in recoil, and even then, he only needed to compensate for the first few shots before the gun turned into a laser beam.
So first 2 bullets will kick, and then it will go straight back to here. Right, and this is the shitty AK, right? This is the shitty one. So this is where, that's your spray pattern at full auto standing, right? And this is the, so worst case scenario, this is what the spray pattern's going to be like with this gun. And if you come back here, and I'll show you right now standing. So, oh no, I'll aim for that bit there, you'll see the kick. I'll do ADS from here. It's a laser beam. It's a fucking laser beam, right? Like, look at that spray pattern. That's with the current Recoil.
So basically our PMCs are recoil ninjas. I asked Pixeled if there was cursor displacement in Escape from Tarkov, and he responded by saying, during the firing cycle, yes, I think it's accurate to say that EFT does displace the cursor position. This is what causes the screen to kick upward, etc. But after the firing is complete, no, it does not appear to keep the cursor displaced, but allows it to fully return to where it was at last user-controlled mouse input point, or however you want to describe it. He then provided me with 2 images. He says to note specifically how after the firing animation is finished, the cursor remains displaced from its original position. And here it is in EFT. The weapon did return back to its initial starting position. Here's a quick look of the crosshair resetting after finishing a spray back to the original point of aim. Then he gives me this analogy. Say we hold out a box of miniature fireworks and we light them. The fireworks would shoot out of the box, fly into the air, and blow up, say a foot or 2 above the box. Again, they're miniature. If we wanted the fireworks to blow up a little lower in the sky, we wouldn't reach out and try to grab the fireworks directly. We'd simply lower the box down a few feet because the box is the piece that we can control. In the same way, I feel like EFT treats the mouse cursor kind of like the box, whereas other games treat it like it's some representation of the fireworks themselves. In EFT, the user is indicating where he'd like to try and shoot, the focal point and cursor position. And from there, the avatar takes over according to his skills and does his best to make it happen. The character's performance then is more like the exploding fireworks. The user has a sort of indirect say on the matter, how high or low to hold the box, but the rest is more or less out of his hands, so to speak. This tends to confuse players because they're so used to constantly trying to grab the fireworks directly and reposition them, i.e. drag the mouse downward to force the recoil control, but that's not quite how EFT wants to interpret the matter. In my mind, the player is intentionally somewhat removed from the process. He says, it seems to me this serves a sort of a standardizing factor. If it approached it from the more traditional sense like other games, certain players would clearly start to have a muscle memory advantage of how much when to pull down on the mouse, etc. But in real life, would we expect to see such wide swings in shooting skill among the best of the best? Probably not. They'd all likely perform very similar to one another. And this, to him, is the somewhat counterintuitive brilliance of BSG's approach. Players who don't like it argue that they should be able to outshoot other players to a degree that simply would not exist were this same scenario presented in real life. So by somewhat limiting user control, perhaps EFT forces the user to focus more on what really matters in a gunfight. Things like positioning, choice of when to move, etc. Not, oh boy, let's see who can drag their mouse down better. Have we been memeing realism to the point where we can't recognize it when it's right in front of our faces? Let me know what you guys think about the recoil mechanics in EFT in the comments. Do you guys think semi-auto should be buffed? Do you think the recoil's fine the way it is now? Or do you think that full auto needs to be nerfed? Also, be sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed or found this helpful. Subscribe for more. Follow me over on Twitch where I often stream the games I play. And one final massive thank you to Pixeled1 for allowing me to use this information to make this video. And I'll see you guys later.